Well, today, we're going to continue down this path of exploring enlightenment because it's a term that's been around for thousands of years and everyone has sought it. It's a path that everyone seeks. It's something that's within us that's desiring to express and to experience. And so I thought today, understanding that enlightenment means living in a state of oneness, living in an infinite awareness that who you are is beyond description, it's beyond anything that you can imagine, and yet it's not separate from everything else out there. Everything is interrelated, interconnected, and there's nothing that happens in this cosmos that we do not feel, sense, know, and touch. So when we talk about the consciousness, when they talk about a butterfly on one side of the world flapping its wings and having an impact on the other, it means that everything is connected. And so every thought that we as an individual have impacts the allness of all that exists. Enlightenment means being aware that every thought that we have has an impact on the world, on the cosmos. Every word we speak has an impact on the planet. The world, the cosmos. Everything that we do has an impact. So you cannot separate thought, words, and actions. I really want to bring that home, and I'm going to be using that a lot as I speak because so many times we're saying, well, my words are pure, or my actions are pure, or my thoughts are pure. But do we have all three in alignment? See, that's the real critical thing, is because sometimes we could be there and we're talking the good game, we're acting the good game, and behind it we're saying, oh, bless his heart. Texans understand that bless his heart is another way of saying something else. And so see the thought behind it. What is the intent behind it that comes out? And so when we talk about this idea of a spiritual gateway, we make this idea of enlightenment so complex. And I really got that to come forth as I explored even further other religions and how they've taken simple concepts and they've expanded them into making them so complex with so many rules and ideas. We can take it from the simplistic teachings of Jesus, love God above all else and love thy neighbor as thyself, and the power comes from within, and it is done unto you as you believe. Simple context. I mean, there's nothing hard about that. However, look at any individual Christian faith that has built its teaching around it, and it's become complex. I can speak from the Catholic perspective because that's what I was born and raised in, and it is beyond anything Jesus ever taught. The idea that when you take the teachings of Jesus, you must understand he did not come forth to create Christianity. Jesus was a Jew who came forth to bring a sense of tool that the Jewish people could use to become enlightened. Isn't that fascinating? So I go back and I'm reading a new book on Kriya Yoga, a book that's published by someone who is now on the outside, and they've been a part of the movement since 1987, very deep in this form of meditation. This is the same form of meditation that Paramahansa Yogananda did. It's of that lineage. And in here, this man now is sort of ostracized from the movement because he was studying one of the lineage. Lahari was one of the lineage after Babaji. This is before Paramahansa Prajnananda and before Yogananda. And what he said is when Lahari taught, he taught in very simplistic ways. He would teach the practice. There were no pictures of the lineage. There were no pictures of other deities. There were no rituals involved. And what has happened in Kriya Yoga is that there are like 4 or 5 different lineages going on right now. Each of them have their gurus. Each of them have their pictures. Each of them have their rituals. And yet when you're going back to the purest of teachings of the man who really got to the point of enlightenment, there was none of that. You see, what he basically said is it becomes a distraction. That you take your mind off of the idea that there's a oneness within you. It's not in the lineage of other masters that have come. All they are teachers. You see, they are teachers, they are examples, but to worship them, to put them on a platform, is to not come from an enlightened way of looking at things. And so we see this example of Jesus who was put out there, and think about it, it's been 2,000 years. Do you think the model of Jesus has been deified? Do you think it's been brought up to a level that no one could possibly measure up to? And yet Jesus was as much a human being as anyone that walked on the planet. And when we saw the people in the temple, he kicked them out because they were money changers. He kicked them out because it was not what he thought the purpose was. He expressed a sense of frustration. He expressed dissatisfaction. He expressed displeasure. He expressed anger. And when he looked at the fig tree and he cursed the fig tree, and the fig tree died. I mean, this is Jesus. He wasn't talking about love. The fig tree wasn't doing what it did, so he cursed it and it died. So the whole idea is when you look at these stories of these sacred saints, these examples, these gurus, these avatars, we must take into perspective, we've got to take what is the real story, not what has been deified around it that causes us to be separate. You see, anything that makes it feel that we're separate from it is an illusion. Because if the person was truly an enlightened being, there was nothing they would do that would cause them to feel separate above or below anyone else. Because to be in a state of enlightenment means we're all one. We're all equal because we're all God expressing. If we're all God expressing, there can be no difference other than how we use our God consciousness, our God power to shift, to create, and express. That's the difference between everyone on this planet, is that each of us is using our God power, and it's not even a God-given power because it has to be ours because we're one with it. Does that make sense? Because if God is all there is, and in its infiniteness, it made itself as everything, then all of the power of God is fully present right where we are, right at this moment, and all we're doing is using it. Enlightenment means to consciously use it, as opposed to unconsciously use it. See, most everything we're doing in life to find this idea of enlightenment is to let go of past habits and patterns of thought and ideas that have restricted us and held us back and boxed us in to the experience that we're having. I was at the Sears repair center yesterday for lawnmowers and goods like that. My lawnmower went out, so I took it in. And I had this beautiful young man come up to me. And he had a big afro, and he was just a good dude. And he was talking to me, and he was real thin. And we were talking, and he says, "You're very peaceful. No one that comes in here is very peaceful." And he says, "What do you do to be so peaceful?" And I says, "I meditate." And he says, "What's meditation?" And I started describing meditation to him. He says, "That's fascinating. I've never heard of anything." He says, "What do you do for a living?" I says, "I'm a teacher." And he says, "What do you teach?" And I says, "I teach spirituality from the sense of self-empowerment." And he goes, "Really?" He says, "I have an affirmation. My affirmation is, I want to be rich." And I looked at him and said, "Change it." I said, "Make it, I am rich." And he stood back, he backed up. And he looked at me. And he said, "I see." He says, "I'm putting it in the future. And you're putting it in the now." And I said, "You got it." I said, "You got it." And so he's typing up my information on the lawnmower, and he looks, and he says, "You're still under warranty. This is not going to cost you a penny." And I said, "Well, you know what one of my affirmations is?" He says, "What's that?" I said, "Good things always happen to me." I say that over and over and over again. It's one of my favorite affirmations. Good things always happen to me. Good things always happen through me. I always say it to and through. And I do that affirmation a minimum of 108 times a day. So I'm in a state of what? Expectancy. I am literally building a consciousness where I'm directing the law toward that. So enlightenment means having that state. You're creating a state of expectancy. So I'm going to give you the very best affirmation in the world that I've created through divine mind to this point. Divine wisdom guides and directs my every thought, word, and action. Now think about that affirmation. Divine wisdom directs my every thought, word, and action. That can apply to anything, can't it? But here's the beauty of that affirmation. You can add on to it. Divine wisdom guides and directs my every thought, word, and action as I create my new business, as I discover what path I choose to serve, as I live in a perfect relationship, as I experience lavish abundance, as I build a network of friends that love and support me, as I partake and create a life so centered in love that no one on the planet has ever experienced it and now does. Do you see how you can take that first sentence and you can build off of it and create everything, and what you're tapping into is the infinite wisdom of the universe that's right there where you are at this moment, and all you're doing is affirming it right here and now. And from that, what you'll find is you say that and you do it over and over and over again, you'll find that when things happen, you shift. And when something of contrast occurs in your life, all of a sudden, instead of a habit of thought, it's now a new pattern of thought that you've created through the saying of that affirmation. So what I've come to understand is there are things that have held us back from this idea of enlightenment. Biggest one is lack of decision. Most people have not made a decision that they want to be enlightened. And why? Because they feel there's not enough time, they don't have enough money, they don't have enough knowledge, they don't know where to go. They don't have confidence. They do not have the belief that it is possible. And so most people say, well, I'm looking at the avatars out there, the few people that we tout as having had enlightenment, Jesus, Buddha, Krishna. If you're in the East, there's Babaji, there's Paramahansa Yogananda, Paramahansa Prajnananda. You can name them all over the place. But you know, the interesting thing is, each person in this room has had moments of enlightenment. And what I'm going to share with you is that's all enlightenment is. It's a moment-by-moment experience. Because we're never going to get to a place where every moment of every day we're in that state of perfect oneness. Can you understand why? Because if we were there, there could be no contrast. And if there's no contrast, then there's no desire to create. And the only purpose we have in our God presence is to create. And you see, the power that we have within us is about creating more. It's not about maintaining. And so in order to create, we have to have a desire built, and a desire being built only happens through contrast, where we get to experience the yin and the yang of something, and we get to choose whether we want the yin or the yang, or maybe the yang, because there's more than just two choices in anything you do. There's always an infinite number of choices in everything. So the idea is, how do we come to rest with the idea that we are always on that journey? You see, when we become peaceful within our mind, that the journey we are on is infinite, that it is ever expanding, always becoming more, then we no longer judge ourselves. Then we can settle in and we can just be the presence. We can be the love. We can be the joy. We can be the creator. But it's about us accepting that idea that it's okay when we're not. We give ourselves permission. In other words, we're living in love because we're no longer judging ourselves. Do you see, when we judge ourselves, we come out of love. And when we come out of love, we come out of oneness. And when we come out of oneness, we lose the ability to feel what enlightenment feels like. Because enlightenment means being so deep in connection with all that is, that nothing takes you from that state. I've been there. Have you been there? Have you been out of there? I was out of there just 2 days ago. And I was asked, why are you talking this way? Why are you out of there? And I looked and I said, because I am consciously choosing to express myself in this way at this time, because I am human, and in my humanness, I feel the urge to do so. Do you see, the beauty of that is that was a very enlightened thing I did, because I was fully aware that I was expressing in a tone of voice, in a way of expressing that may have not been, oh, I'm in love. You know, expressing is not always with a monotone. If it was a monotone, we wouldn't be in the human body. Am I correct? So if you know, let me share my background just a little bit. I'm half Sicilian. My mother came from Sicily. I'm half Polish. My parents came from Poland. There is not one quiet bone in either sides of my families. So there is a loud, expressive nature. So when you think that you're going to get quietly, you're only fooling yourself. You're always going to get passionate, and the more passionate I become, my voice raises, my enthusiasm becomes greater. It's my way of expressing as an individualization. It's my thumbprint on the universe. Here's the thing. I like that thumbprint. And I am not going to change it, despite what anyone in the world wants me to do. Because when I say it that way, I'm saying I love myself so much that I don't care what you think. Because if you care what someone else thinks, then you're subordinating yourself to the other person. When you subordinate yourself to someone else, you're not on an equal playing field. When you're not on an equal playing field, where are you? You're in separation. You're no longer in enlightenment, and you're no longer experiencing love or oneness. You see, you got to bring it back. You're always bringing it back. What does oneness feel like? So there's relationships. Let's go into that aspect of it from an enlightened standpoint. When you are in an enlightened standpoint, it means you are not asking your partner to be something other than their being. It's accepting them as they are, seeing them in their allness, in their fullness, right where they are, and knowing that it's the individualization of God as God chooses to be, and expressing themselves. Now, if they're expressing differently than you want, it doesn't mean you have to be with them. Take a walk. I do that all the time when Jean comes home from work. And she's radiating this very, very, very different energy. I can feel it, sense it, know it, and she does the same with me. And we go to different parts of the home. There's no sense. You see, here's the thing that happens. When you are in a state of oneness, it's easy to be together. When you're in a state where your vibrations are very contrary, the only thing that can happen is what? Egos coming into play. When egos come into play, there's going to be conflict because one ego wants to win, the other wants to win as well. And when two want to win, there's going to be this. Because it's not about, I don't want to use the term compromise because I believe in relationships, compromise, both people lose. It's collaboration. Because in collaboration, you find a way where both people win. And if both people win, now you're back to oneness. See how that works? So what I'm doing is I'm giving you all of these examples about how we can be in different parts of our lives, and we can try to shift the mental process so that we can come to the point of feeling, sensing, and knowing what does it mean to be oneness here. A member of our community right now is experiencing a health challenge with one of their loving animals. Anyone here have an animal that they've lost? Everyone who has an animal loving us. Is it not the hardest thing in the world? Because one of the things about animals is they love unconditionally. They always know your oneness. They are never judging you. You can discipline them, and a second later, the dog is licking and lapping and just happy as can be. The key thing is that in oneness, is to be able to see in that animal when it was a puppy, when it was healthy, virile, when it was chasing frisbees, chasing balls, but also to be able to see that part of its natural expression is to release its body so that it can go on. You see, animals know when their time on this earth is done. Animals understand. That when it's no longer, the body is no longer serving, it's time to let the body go. We, in our humanness, don't want to let it go. We want to hold on. But what I've understood is that every time I've let one of my beautiful pets go, I've opened the door for another beautiful pet and even more love. It seems that with every new animal Gene and I bring into our loving home, it's like the dog coming in is more enlightened than the one in front of it. Think about that, because this is an interesting thing. Because once you reach a level of consciousness, a level of awareness, you can't go down. Because this becomes the new standard, and when that standard is there, the only thing that you can attract is equal to that standard or above the standard. So what you're doing in every moment of life is you are lifting your consciousness, you're lifting your awareness, you're lifting your enlightenment, and then what must happen is you must attract that or more. So it's an evolution, it's the natural process, isn't it? It's about becoming more all the time. And that's what enlightenment means. It's to be able to see beyond the static quo and see that there's more, being happy in the static quo, but knowing that you're stepping into a greaterness, not wanting to be too far in the future, but being fully present with every move you make. So an enlightened being is mindful. So we talk about that there are two practices that we do. We meditate, still the mind, get into oneness, and I've talked a lot about meditation. So I'm now going to say there's meditation and mindfulness, M&M, okay? Mindfulness involves prayer, gratitude, forgiveness, affirmations, anything you do that's directing your thought, directing the law. That means you're mindfully doing it. You're consciously doing that. So it's sort of interesting when you look at the teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, who is teaching this unbelievable Zen-type philosophy. He talks about mindfulness all the time. But until yesterday, when I was putting my talk together, I couldn't relate to mindfulness and directing the law. All mindful meant to me was I'm present. But you see, it's beyond that. It's just that I wasn't understanding the words he was using, and the people that I've heard speak about what he teaches weren't using words that I could hear because I'm coming from a Western mind. He's coming from an Eastern mind. And so the perspectives are different. It's making sense? And so what we have to do is we've got to find a way, how do we blend all of this wisdom, all of this knowledge about being one and directing life into something that we as an individual can use, which is expanding our what? Our ability to be enlightened, our ability to be creative, our ability to experience joy, our ability to be compassionate, our ability to be in oneness. It's all we are ever seeking. I think one of the key things to this path to enlightenment that we forget is to have fun. Think about it from this standpoint. If you are the infinite individualization of God, if you are God expressing and you are infinite, what does that mean? It means you cannot fail because you're going to be here tomorrow forevermore, which means you never make a mistake because you always get a do-over. And having a do-over, meaning you can't make a mistake, means you can do anything you want and you can continue to do it a different way and a different way and a different way. So if you've got that ability, why not do it in fun? Why not do it in joy? Why not do it in an expectation of laughing? Would you want to be around someone who is serious all the time? Or do you want to be around someone who is fun and makes you laugh? David Deida in his book, The Way of the Superior Man, phenomenal psychologist. He's written many books, and most people refer to him almost like a Bible when it comes to relationships. But David Deida said, from a man's perspective, there are two things you can do and are the basis to keep a woman happy. Number one, gently every now and then, touch her. Just let her know that you're connected with her. It's nothing other than that. It's a connection. That's all, that you're connected. The second thing he says is make them laugh. Isn't that fascinating? Because when you're laughing, there are no problems. When you are laughing, you're sharing oneness. When you're laughing, you're in your natural state of joy. Isn't that what it's about? We take life way too seriously. Way too seriously. I want to tell a story, but we're going on film, so I can't tell the story right now. I'll tell it to you during the offering. I'll tease you people in the video out there that as you watch this worldwide, you want to come to Agape so you can hear some of the stories that I can't put on film. So anyway, excuse me while I did a little pan over there to the camera and that, because sometimes you got to realize the message that we are building here at Agape, it's a message that goes around the world. We have at least 100 and 150 people watching this message weekly on YouTube and over 300 people listening to it on iTunes. So we've got 450 to 500 people outside of here that are watching us, listening to us on a weekly basis. So this consciousness that we're raising is not just happening here, but it's happening with the people here, it's happening with the people around the world. And that's not it, because each one of the people that hear this message in some way are shifting, and when they shift, it's the wings of a butterfly that are affecting everything around the world. So what we're doing here, by you listening, by you absorbing, by you being a part of this energy, you're changing the planet. Here's the interesting thing, and I love this. Anyone know Jim Rohn? Jim Rohn is one of the greatest motivational speakers that's ever been on the planet. He died a couple years ago. He was 80 years old. Tony Robbins learned from Jim Rohn. And one of the things that Jim Rohn said very clearly, there's a 3-minute YouTube, you can go watch on it. And he said, do not associate with the 97%. In other words, he says there are 3% of the people out there who are moving and shaking, who are creating, who are into expansion, into newness. The 97%, they're stuck where they are. And if you talk like them, if you think like them, if you act like them, you're going to have the experience. And he keeps talking about this, and Abraham talks about there's never a crowd on the leading edge. So if you think, when you adopt the philosophy that you are the creator of your life, that you believe that thoughts are things, you are coming from an enlightened standpoint, and that's not where the majority of the people of the world are at this time. And so what you have to do is you have to be selective as you go down and find your spiritual gateway. As you're doing your practice, one of the key things is surround yourself with people and communities that support you in your growth. Because that's where you're going to be supported. Otherwise, people are going to say, they're going to mock you. They're going to laugh at you. They're going to present other views. And then with that pressure, you may be changing even unconsciously changing your ideas, your beliefs, so that you're nullifying them, you're knocking them down, you're numbing them down. And in the numbing of them down, guess what you get to experience? Numb down experience. So we should have had Steve play Comfortably Numb today, because that would be, that's appropriate in every sermon I give. And maybe that ought to be our theme song. But the idea is, you think about the groups out there, the rock and roll groups, and the songs that they have written, because they think so much about what's real. When you take the song Comfortably Numb, there's a huge message there. Jim Rohn was saying that's 97% of the people of this world. When you look at who's the wealthiest people in the world, it's in the top 3 to 5%. When you think about who are the healthy people in the world, it's the top 3 to 5%. If you think about who the happy people of the world are, it's in the top 3 to 5%. I don't know why it's that way. I just know that all the studies seem to bring these numbers that show that. So the question I want to ask you, on your path to enlightenment, who do you want to hang with? And this is a big question. Because as you ponder this, you're going to start to look in your life and you're going to start to say, whoa, I got some people that I shouldn't probably be with. And it's not that you shouldn't be with, but you can control how you spend your time. Does that make sense? You are in control. You have the ability to choose. So I want to let you know, all you have to do today is make a decision. The decision is, I choose to live an enlightened life. From that decision, you begin to move slowly It is not a fast movement. Give up the idea that it's going to happen overnight. But every day you can take one step closer. Then you schedule your time, and you set time for your enlightenment, where you meditate, you pray, you do forgiveness work, you do gratitude work. Every day, if the only thing you do is at the end of the day when you're lying in bed, say 5 things you're grateful for. Just say 5 things you're grateful for. You're going to say, I'm abundant, just by being grateful. Here's the most important thing. Expect it. From this moment on, expect to become enlightened. Expect to feel it. And then expect to share it with people who love and support you. If you do this, you are living the greatest commandments of all time, and that is to love God above all else and to love your neighbor as yourself. Because to be in one, you have to live by those commandments. I want to thank you for joining us today. I am so grateful that you took your time to watch or listen to this message. If you found this message beneficial, I would ask you to go to our website. Once there, click on the Contribute button and experience the joy of conscious and purposeful giving. It is through your gifts that we are able to bring this message to the world. I would also ask you to please share this message with anyone you feel might benefit. Again, I want to thank you for joining me and the Agape community as together we bring joy to life.